Let me tell you something that took me years to fully appreciate. Years of wandering, years of wishing, years of wondering why some people seem to have everything figured out while I couldn't quite get my footing. And when the understanding finally arrived, it didn't arrive gently. It arrived the way truth usually does, with a kind of force that cuts right through all the comfortable stories you've been telling yourself. Results don't lie. That's the statement I want to park right in the center of your thinking today. Not as a threat, not as a criticism, but as one of the most liberating, clarifying, and ultimately hopeful ideas you will ever encounter. Because here's what I've learned after decades of studying human achievement, human failure, and the extraordinary distance between the two. The fact that results don't lie is not a curse placed upon those of us who haven't yet arrived at where we want to be. It is, in fact, the very thing that makes progress possible. It is the foundation upon which every genuine transformation in human history has been built. It is the bedrock of personal accountability. It is the starting line of every race worth running. You cannot change what you refuse to see, and you cannot see clearly when you're swimming in excuses. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not standing before you to make anyone feel small. That has never been my purpose. My purpose has always been the same: to light a fire, yes, but more importantly, to hand you the tools so you can keep that fire burning long after this moment has passed. What I am saying, with every ounce of conviction I possess, is that the mirror of results is the most honest friend you will ever have. And most people are terrified of that friend. Most people avoid that friend. Most people would rather surround themselves with those who will nod along, agree with every justification, and send them off into another year of the same life, dressed up in the costume of a new beginning. Don't be most people. Think about what a result actually is. Strip away all the emotion, all the pride, all the defensiveness. A result is simply a report card from reality. It tells you, with absolute honesty, what your habits, your decisions, your disciplines, and your philosophies have been producing. Not what you intended to produce. Not what you hoped to produce. Not what you told your family you were going to produce. What you actually produced. And there is an enormous difference between those two things for most human beings walking the earth today. Here is where I want you to lean in, because this is where the story gets interesting. Most people look at their results and feel shame. They look at their bank account and feel shame. They look at their health and feel shame. They look at their relationships, their career, the state of their ambitions, and they feel shame. And because shame is an uncomfortable emotion, they do what human beings naturally do with uncomfortable things. They move away from it. They rationalize. They explain. They construct elaborate narratives about why the results they have are not truly a reflection of who they are or what they are capable of. And those narratives, those beautiful, detailed, well-rehearsed narratives, are the chains that keep them exactly where they are. I want to propose a completely different relationship with your results. What if, and stay with me here, what if instead of looking at your results with shame, you looked at them with curiosity? What if you treated them the way a scientist treats data? A scientist doesn't weep when an experiment produces an unexpected outcome. A scientist doesn't feel that the result is a judgment on their worth as a human being. A scientist looks at the outcome and asks a simple, powerful question. What does this tell me? What does this tell me about my approach? What does this tell me about my assumptions? What does this tell me about the adjustments I need to make before the next attempt? What does this tell me about the seeds I have been planting versus the harvest I have been hoping for? That shift from shame to curiosity is one of the most powerful internal transformations available to any human being. And it begins with accepting the honesty of results rather than retreating from it. Let me take you back to when I was 25 years old. I was broke, not inconveniently short on funds, genuinely broke. And I had a long list of reasons why. The economy was difficult. My background wasn't privileged. I hadn't had the opportunities others had. Nobody had ever taught me about money. The list went on. It was comprehensive. It was convincing. It was, in my own mind at least, entirely satisfactory as an explanation for why my results were what they were. And then I met Earl Schoaf. Mr. Schoaf didn't attack my list of reasons. He didn't dismiss them or mock them. He simply asked me a question that I have never forgotten. He said, "Jim, how long have you had these reasons?" I told him, "Most of my life." He nodded and said, "And how are they working for you?" That question landed somewhere deep, because the honest answer, the result, was clear. My reasons weren't working for me at all. They were keeping me exactly where I didn't want to be. My reasons were my prison, and I had been so occupied defending them that I hadn't noticed I was holding the key. The moment you stop defending your reasons and start examining your results, that is the moment your life begins to turn. Now, there is a philosophy at work underneath all of this, and I want to bring it to the surface because philosophy drives everything. People often ask me, Jim, why do two people with similar backgrounds, similar circumstances, even similar talents end up in such vastly different places in life? And the answer is not one that most people want to hear. The answer is philosophy, not luck, not connections, not even work ethic alone, though that matters enormously. At the foundation of every life is a set of beliefs about yourself, about the world, about what is possible, about what you deserve, about cause and effect, about whether effort and discipline are reliably rewarded. And your results are simply the visible expression of that invisible philosophy. This is why results don't lie, because your results aren't lying about your circumstances. They're telling the truth about your philosophy. They are broadcasting, in the most precise language imaginable, what you have been believing and doing and choosing and avoiding over the span of your days. If you believe that life happens to you rather than for you, your results will reflect that belief. Every setback will become evidence of a hostile universe. Every disappointment will confirm that the game is rigged against you. Every plateau will be further proof that you've gone as far as someone like you can reasonably go. And you will be absolutely right. Not because the universe is hostile, not because the game is truly rigged, but because your philosophy makes it so in your particular experience of it. Conversely, and here is where I want you to really pay attention. If you believe that life responds to what you do, that results flow from disciplines and decisions, that the distance between where you are and where you want to be is measured in philosophy and action rather than luck and circumstance, then your results will begin to shift, slowly at first, subtly, in ways you might almost miss if you're not watching carefully. But they will shift, because results follow philosophy the way shadows follow sunlight, consistently, reliably, without exception. Let me talk about something that doesn't get enough attention in these conversations, and that is the extraordinary value of honest feedback. We live in an era where everyone is being told that they're wonderful, that they're perfect just as they are, that any acknowledgement of falling short is somehow unkind or discouraging. I understand the compassion behind that impulse, but compassion without honesty is just comfortable deception, and comfortable deception is the quiet enemy of growth. The most valuable people in my life have been those willing to tell me the truth. Not cruelly, not harshly, but clearly, without the softening that comes from wanting to protect my feelings at the expense of my progress. When someone cares enough to show you your results without a filter, when someone loves you enough to say, this is what's actually happening, not what you wish were happening, that is a gift of the highest order. Treasure those people. Seek out more of them. Because the alternative is what I call the conspiracy of comfort. The people around you who nod along, who agree with your excuses, who say you're doing great when the results clearly indicate otherwise. These people feel kind. They seem supportive, but they are quietly, unintentionally, participating in your stagnation. They are co-signing your limitations. They are voting, in their own way, for you to stay exactly where you are. And there is nothing genuinely kind about that, regardless of how warm the intention behind it. Now, let me address something important because I sense the question forming in some of your minds. Does this mean we should be harsh with ourselves? Does this mean we should be relentless critics, standing over our own lives with a clipboard full of failings, cataloging every place we have come up short? Absolutely not. That is not what the honest examination of results requires. What it requires is what I would call disciplined self-honesty. You look at the result. You acknowledge it clearly and completely. You do not add dramatic suffering to it. That serves nothing and helps no one, least of all yourself. You do not construct a story about what the result means about your permanent worth as a human being, because it means nothing of the sort. You simply ask, what adjustments would produce a different result? What needs to change in my thinking, in my habits, in my approach, in my associations, to create something better? And then you make those adjustments with everything you have. That is the process. It is not glamorous. It does not always make for exciting stories, but it is what works. And after all, results don't lie. Let me talk about the dimension of time, because this is where so many people stumble on the path between where they are and where they want to go. Time is the great equalizer and the great revealer. Everyone on this planet receives the same 24 hours each day. The president of a nation and the person sweeping the floor in that nation's capital, they both receive 24 hours. What separates their outcomes is not the quantity of time, but the quality of what is done with it. And here is the thing about time that most people miss entirely. It moves with or without your active participation. 5 years from today, 5 years will have passed. That is a certainty no force in the universe can alter. The only question, the only real variable you control, is what those 5 years will have produced. And they will produce something. Time always produces results. The only choice available to you is whether those results will be the product of intention and discipline or the product of drift and avoidance. I have met people who drifted through 40 years of their adult lives and then looked around with genuine bewilderment, wondering why they had so little to show for all that passage of time. The years went by, they said, as if the years had done something to them rather than something with them, as if they had been passengers in their own existence rather than drivers of it. Time doesn't just go by. Time passes, and it takes you with it, in one direction or another, towards something deliberate or towards something accidental. The people I have seen build extraordinary lives, in financial terms, in terms of relationships, in terms of vitality and contribution and genuine fulfillment, they had one quality above all else. They were willing to let their results teach them. They did not treat a poor result as a final verdict on their capacity. They treated it as a current reading, accurate, honest, and temporary, because they fully intended to change the inputs that were generating it. Think about a farmer. A farmer who plants corn and gets a poor harvest does not curse the soil and abandon farming forever. He examines what happened. Was there sufficient water? Was the soil properly prepared? Was the seed itself of high quality? Was the timing appropriate for the season? He learns from the result, and he plants again, but now with better information than he possessed before. The next harvest reflects not just his renewed effort, but his accumulated learning. The result shaped him. He engaged with it instead of retreating from it. And that engagement made his next planting more intelligent than his last. That is precisely how results are meant to function in a human life. Not as permanent sentences handed down by an indifferent judge, but as honest, reliable feedback from a universe that is actually quite willing, eager, even, to reward those who engage with it honestly and persistently. I want to spend some time now on what I consider to be one of the most underrated abilities in modern life, and that is the capacity for honest self-assessment. Most people are surprisingly poor at accurately evaluating their own situation. Not because they lack intelligence. Many brilliant people are spectacularly bad at this. But because accurate self-assessment requires a kind of emotional neutrality that is genuinely difficult to achieve when you are standing inside your own life, surrounded by your own stories, your own hopes, your own fears, your own deeply held beliefs about who you are and what you are capable of and what the world owes you. Here is a practice I have recommended for decades. Once a year, sit down and conduct what I call a life audit. Not a list of resolutions. Those tend to be fantasies dressed up in the clothing of plans. A genuine audit. Look at every major area of your life with unflinching honesty. Your finances, not what you wish they were, but what they actually are today. Your health, not how you feel in your best moments, but the unfiltered reality of your energy, your habits, and what the mirror of honest assessment shows you. Your relationships, not the story you tell at social occasions, but what the daily reality actually produces in terms of joy, depth, and mutual growth. Your professional progress, your personal development, your contribution to the people and causes around you. Write it all down. Use numbers where you can, because numbers do not negotiate or soften things out of politeness. I want to be financially stronger is a wish dressed up as a goal. My savings account currently holds this amount. My debt stands at this level, and my monthly financial surplus or deficit is precisely this figure. That is an honest result. And honest results give you something real and tangible to work with. They give you coordinates. And you cannot navigate to a destination without knowing your current coordinates. Once you have that honest picture clearly in front of you, the path forward becomes surprisingly clear. Not easy, clear. There is a profound and important difference between those two things. Easy is what we wish the path forward always were. Clear is what we need it to be. Clarity about where you are today is the indispensable, non-negotiable starting point of every genuine journey toward where you want to be tomorrow. Now I want to address a question that I know is forming for some of you, because I have been in enough rooms with enough people over enough years to know when it's coming. Some of you are sitting here thinking, I know my results are not what I want them to be. I've been aware of that for a long time. Simply knowing it hasn't seemed to help very much. So what is the missing piece? The missing piece, almost without exception, is a change in philosophy before the change in behavior. Here's what I mean by that. Most people approach change from entirely the wrong direction. They attempt to change what they do without first changing what they think. They try to install new behaviors on top of old beliefs. They paint new paint over an old, crumbling surface, and it doesn't hold. Or it holds temporarily, just long enough to create the comforting illusion of progress. And then the underlying beliefs reassert themselves with quiet, steady force, and the behaviors regress right back to where they were before. Sometimes worse, because now there's the additional weight of a failed attempt added to the story. Consider the person who decides to transform their financial situation. They create a budget. They cut back on spending. They open a savings account with fierce intention. And for a period, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, genuine progress accumulates. And then, for most people, the old patterns return. The budget gets set aside. The savings get redirected toward comfort purchases. The gap between intention and behavior reopens. Why? Not because the person lacks willpower, not because they are weak or undisciplined by nature, but because the underlying philosophy never changed. What they believe about their own identity, whether they are the kind of person who manages money well, whether they genuinely deserve financial security, whether discipline is something they're actually capable of sustaining, that philosophy never shifted. The new behaviors were built on the old foundation, and the old foundation eventually cracked under the weight. Change your philosophy first. Examine what you actually believe at the deepest level about your own capacity for sustained discipline. Examine what you believe about whether effort reliably pays off or whether the world is essentially random. Examine what you believe about whether you are fundamentally worthy of the results you claim to want. These are not comfortable questions. They require a kind of internal courage that is rarer than most people acknowledge. But they are the questions that matter most. Because your results, honest as they always are answering these questions every single day, whether you choose to look at the answers or not. And here is the extraordinary thing about philosophy. Unlike your past, unlike your circumstances, unlike the family you were born into or the neighborhood where you grew up, your philosophy can change. It is not fixed. It is not hardwired. It is not predetermined by anything that has already happened to you. Philosophy is a choice that most people make unconsciously and then live out automatically, wondering all the while why they keep producing the same results year after year. But when you make that choice consciously, when you decide with full deliberate intention what you are going to believe about yourself, your world, your possibilities, and your relationship with discipline and effort, everything downstream of that choice begins to shift. Let me talk about accountability next, because results don't lie, and accountability is simply the discipline of taking the truth of your results seriously enough to actually act upon what they reveal. One of the most defeating phrases I have ever heard, and I have heard it in many forms over many years, is some variation of, I know what I should be doing, I just don't do it. Most people who say this have been saying it for a long time. They say it with a kind of tired resignation, as if it were simply a fixed feature of their character rather than a choice they are actively making each and every day. But it is a choice. And the fact that it is a choice, not a sentence, not a destiny, but a choice, is actually magnificent news. Because choices can be made differently, starting with any choice, on any day, including today. The discipline to do what you know you should do, even when motivation has gone quiet, even when the path of least resistance is calling with its familiar and comfortable voice, even when the easy option is right there and the right option requires genuine effort. That discipline is the single greatest differentiator between the life people have and the life they are capable of building. More than raw talent, more than measured intelligence, more than connections, timing, or any of the other external factors people gesture toward when explaining the gap between where they are and where they wish they were. Discipline is consistent behavior, rooted in clear philosophy, aimed at producing honest results. That is the full equation. Remove any of those three components, and the whole structure weakens. Behavior without philosophy is effort without direction. Philosophy without behavior is wisdom without impact. And neither one has any real power without the honest feedback of results to calibrate them both. Now, someone might say to me, Jim, isn't it discouraging to face your results honestly when they aren't good? Isn't it better to stay positive, to focus on the best possible interpretation of where you currently stand, to protect your confidence from the bruising that comes with honest assessment? And I would say, respectfully but without hesitation, no. That kind of selective vision is not positivity. It is avoidance in a more flattering costume. And avoidance, no matter how it dresses itself, never built anything worth having. There is a version of genuine positivity that is powerful beyond any description I can offer. I believe in it without reservation. It is the positivity that says, I see clearly where I am. I acknowledge it without drama, without self-destruction, without the theatrics of excessive guilt that serve nothing but distraction. And I am absolutely, unshakably convinced that I can move from this place to somewhere substantially better if I engage the right philosophy, make the right decisions, and sustain the right disciplines through time. That is not naive optimism. That is earned, reasoned, results-tested confidence. That kind of positivity is rocket fuel. It propels people forward through circumstances that stop others cold. The alternative, the positivity that says everything is wonderful when the results are clearly indicating otherwise, is not protection. It is a slow-acting sedative. And sedated people do not change anything in themselves or in the world. Let me bring in the dimension of relationships, because results in our human connections deserve the same honest examination we apply, or should apply, to every other arena. Look at the quality of the relationships in your life right now, not how long they have lasted. Duration is not synonymous with quality, and enduring something is not the same as thriving within it. Not how warm your feelings are for another person. Feelings matter, but they are not the full picture. Look at what those relationships are actually creating. Are they producing mutual growth, where both people are being challenged and inspired and genuinely elevated? Are they built on honest communication, where difficult truths can be spoken because both people care more about each other's genuine progress than about short-term comfort? Are they the kinds of bonds where your best instincts are consistently encouraged and your worst patterns are reflected back to you with caring clarity? Or are they relationships of collective stagnation, where everyone remains carefully comfortable, where honesty gets rationed to protect the peace, where the same conversations circle endlessly without resolution because genuine change would require genuine honesty, and that feels too risky for anyone to initiate? Results don't lie in relationships any more than they do in finances or health. If you have been caught in the same patterns with the same people for years, and those patterns are not generating growth, connection, or authentic joy, the result is communicating something important. The only question is whether you are willing to listen, not with alarm, not with the intention of discarding relationships carelessly, but with the willingness to ask what genuine adjustments might cultivate something richer and more nourishing for everyone involved. Let me also address the role of association in the results your life produces, because this is an area that most people dramatically underestimate. Show me the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I will show you a remarkably accurate picture of where your life is heading. Not because people are incapable of rising above their environment. They clearly are. But because human beings are enormously, powerfully influenced by those closest to them. We absorb the attitudes of the people we are around most consistently. We adopt their standards of what is normal and what is acceptable. We inherit their level of ambition or their tolerance for mediocrity. We take on their relationship with discipline, with honesty, with the willingness to be genuinely challenged and to grow through that challenge. If you surround yourself with people who have made peace with average, who have decided that the results they have are probably the results they were always going to get, their peace with that conclusion will slowly, quietly become your own. Not because you decided to adopt their philosophy deliberately, but because constant proximity to any philosophy eventually makes it feel natural, even when it isn't originally yours. Conversely, spend significant time among people who are actively building something, who are engaged and intentional and genuinely growing. who examine their results regularly and respond honestly to what those results reveal. And that orientation will begin to feel natural to you as well. Their standards become your standards. Their expectations of themselves raise your expectations of yourself. Their urgency to grow transfers through nothing more than regular proximity into your own way of moving through the world. This is why the choice of who you spend your time with is not a peripheral lifestyle preference. It is a strategic decision of the highest order. It directly shapes what your results will look like 5 years from now in ways that are just as powerful as any formal plan or disciplined habit. Choose your associations with the same deliberate intention you bring to your most important commitments. Because in terms of shaping your results, they are among your most important commitments. I want to bring this all together now because I have been building toward a particular understanding throughout this time together, and I want to make certain it lands with the clarity it deserves. The reason that results not lying is a genuinely good thing, an extraordinarily liberating and hopeful thing, is precisely this. It means the universe operates by consistent, learnable, and universally applicable principles. It means that meaningful results are not reserved for the lucky or the privileged or those who were somehow specially equipped by birth or circumstance. It means that the production of meaningful, genuine, lasting results is accessible to anyone, absolutely anyone, who is willing to examine their current results with honesty, trace those results back to the philosophy and habits and associations that produce them, make the necessary adjustments with full commitment and sustained discipline, and persist through the natural lag time between changed inputs and changed outputs. That is democracy in its most fundamental and personal form. The equal availability of growth, progress, and genuine transformation to any human being willing to pay the required price, which is honesty, discipline, sustained effort, and the courage to remain in honest relationship with their own results even when those results are uncomfortable to face. The person who refuses to examine their results honestly is quietly betting against themselves with every day that passes. They are investing time and energy in a story that keeps them exactly where they are. They are trading the discomfort of honest understanding for the temporary relief of false explanation. And it costs them dearly, not in a single dramatic moment of reckoning, but in the slow, almost invisible accumulation of unrealized potential that gathers over months and years and decades. It is the cost that is hardest to calculate because you are paying it in what could have been rather than in what has been lost. And what could have been is a very expensive thing to sacrifice. The person who looks their results squarely in the face, who says, with clarity and without flinching, "This is where I genuinely am. This is what my current philosophy and disciplines have actually been producing. This is the honest report card from reality." And who then asks with genuine desire to understand, "What must I change to produce something different?" That person has stepped onto a path that leads somewhere truly magnificent. And that path is open, right now, not after you have fixed something else first, not once circumstances have improved, not when you feel more prepared or the timing feels more aligned. The honest examination of your results, the willingness to engage with your life as it actually is rather than as you would prefer it to be, that willingness is available to you in this very moment. I want to say something now directly to those of you who may be looking at some of your results right now and feeling the genuine weight of them. Those of you for whom this conversation is touching something that honestly hurts. Perhaps the financial picture is more difficult than you want to acknowledge. Perhaps the health you always planned to build but never quite got around to. Those results are speaking clearly and uncomfortably. Perhaps the relationship that hasn't been what you'd hoped for longer than you've been willing to admit, even to yourself. Perhaps the career that is not what the 22-year-old version of you believed it would become. I want to say this to you directly. The discomfort of looking honestly at those results is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of caring. And caring, genuine caring about the gap between what is and what could be, is the beginning of every significant change. You cannot be moved to change something you do not care enough about to feel the distance between its current state and its possible state. The discomfort of honest self-assessment, when it is felt clearly rather than numbed by distraction or rationalization, is one of the most valuable experiences available to a human being. It is the sensation of growth preparing to happen. Honor it. Don't rush to silence it. Let it sharpen your intention to the finest possible point. Because intention is what connects honest assessment to purposeful action. And purposeful action, sustained, disciplined, philosophy-rooted, result-responsive purposeful action, is what changes outputs over time. Let me address one final thing before I close, because I've observed a consistent pattern across decades of watching people in the process of genuine change. There is a predictable and important gap between inspiration and installation, and most people underestimate it significantly. Inspiration is what happens in moments like this one. Something resonates, something shifts, a fire gets lit or relit in a place that had grown cold. And that feeling is real. It matters enormously. It is the spark without which nothing else can begin. But a spark is not a fire. A spark requires fuel and oxygen and sustained deliberate attention before it becomes the kind of flame that illuminates and warms with any consistency. And a flame itself requires continued daily tending before it becomes the kind of enduring heat that changes a life. The gap between inspiration and installation is where most genuine attempts at change quietly disappear. People leave moments of honest insight with the best of intentions, return to the routines and relationships and environments that generated their current results, and find, gradually, almost imperceptibly, that the old patterns reassert themselves, not because they are weak, but because they did not do the necessary work of installing new philosophy and new habits at a level deep enough to withstand the gravitational pull of the familiar. What installation requires is this. It requires repetition, not a single heroic decision, but the daily decision, made again and again until the new approach becomes the new normal and the old default loses its automatic grip. It requires deliberate environment design, shaping the circumstances of your daily life so that the right behaviors are made easier and the destructive ones harder to access. It requires intentional community, surrounding yourself with people who are living at the level of results you are genuinely reaching for. People who will hold you to your stated intentions not through surveillance, but through the daily modeling of what is possible. And above all, it requires the sustained willingness to let your results, honest, unflinching, undeniable, serve as your ongoing calibration instrument, not once a year, but continuously, the way an experienced navigator constantly checks position against destination and adjusts course as needed. I have spent a lifetime studying what separates those who build extraordinary lives from those who do not. And extraordinary does not mean famous or wealthy in some conventional scoreboard sense. It does not mean free from difficulty or loss or challenge. Those realities visit every human life without discrimination or favoritism. Extraordinary means fully and consciously engage with the genuine possibilities of your own particular life. It means experiencing on a consistent basis the vitality of growing, contributing, connecting, and creating at a level that produces the feeling of being fully and genuinely alive. The people who live that way, and I have had the privilege of knowing and learning from many of them, share a particular and distinctive relationship with truth. They seek it out. They actively invite it in. They do not arrange their lives to be insulated from feedback that might challenge their current self-image. They treat every result, including and especially the disappointing ones, as intelligence to be gathered, considered, and applied. They have learned, through practice and often through the hard education of experience, to be genuinely grateful for the honest mirror, even when the reflection it offers is not what they had hoped to see. Because they understand what I want you to carry with you from this moment forward. They understand that results don't lie, and they have learned, as I hope you are beginning to see clearly today, that this is not a limitation. It is not a burden. It is not something to dread or explain away. It is a promise, a reliable, consistent, available promise that the universe makes to every person willing to engage with it honestly. The promise that the principles governing results are constant and learnable and available to you right now. The promise that if you engage with those principles with honesty and persistence and genuine sustained commitment, your results will change in exactly the direction your changed philosophy and changed disciplines point them. The promise that the same consistent universe that has been faithfully producing your current results will just as faithfully produce different ones, better ones, the ones you have the genuine capacity to earn, the moment you change what you are bringing to it. That is an extraordinary promise. Let it register fully. The universe does not play favorites. The principles that build genuine wealth do not selectively exclude certain people. The principles that generate real health do not function only for some. The principles that build depth of relationship, meaningful work, vibrant continuing growth, they are universal. They respond to everyone who applies them with sincerity and discipline. They operated before you understood them, and they will continue operating after today. They do not require your belief in order to function. They only require your participation, your task. The only task that matters as you walk out of here and back into your life is to understand those principles clearly enough and commit to them fully enough and stay honest with your results faithfully enough to let them work in your life at the level they are fully capable of working. That is why results don't lie is not something to fear. It is the most solid ground available to anyone in genuine pursuit of growth. Because the alternative, a world where results were random, where discipline sometimes rewarded you and sometimes didn't, where honest effort might or might not produce an honest return, that would be a world stripped of genuine hope. That would be a world where the most any of us could do is guess and wish and wait for circumstances to align in our favor by accident. But that is not the world we live in. We live in a world of cause and effect, of philosophy and results, of seeds deliberately planted and harvests honestly earned, of decisions compounded through time into destinies, of habits practiced into character and character expressed into outcomes. And that world, consistent, principled, honest in every piece of feedback it offers, is a world where every single person here today has the genuine, complete, unqualified capacity to produce something worth being deeply proud of. Every single morning, when you wake and your feet touch the floor and the day opens in front of you with all of its particular possibilities and demands, you are standing at the beginning of another set of results. Not the results of 5 years from now, not the results of the life you will eventually construct, the results of today, this one day, this one set of choices about how to use the hours available, which commitments to honor and which to rationalize away, whether to do the thing that genuinely matters or to defer it once more in favor of what is comfortable, whether to be honest with yourself about where you stand or to look away for one more day. Those daily results, small and quiet and largely invisible to anyone watching from outside your life, are the bricks from which everything significant is eventually built. Not the grand gestures, not the occasional heroic efforts made visible and acknowledged by others. The daily, private, disciplined choices made when no one is watching and the comfortable alternative is readily available. Those choices accumulate. Day after day, week after week, season after season, they pile up into something either magnificent or disappointing. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at the far end of a life examined in full, those accumulated daily results will have constructed something. A life either lived up to or lived beneath the genuine standard of what was possible. This is why I remain so deeply convicted of this particular truth after all these years. Results don't lie, not only in the grand sense of careers and financial outcomes and the measurable milestones that the outside world uses for comparison, but in the small, daily, private sense as well. The result of one morning devoted to focused reading rather than passive distraction. The result of one genuinely honest conversation rather than one carefully comfortable avoidance. The result of one disciplined choice in the direction of long-term benefit rather than short-term ease. These small daily results speak just as truthfully as the grand ones, and they compound with exactly the same reliability. Over time, the person who consistently makes the marginally better choice, not the perfect choice, not the extraordinary choice, simply the consistently better one, builds a life that looks, from the outside, as though it were produced by some unusual gift or rare circumstance. But from the inside, they know the actual truth. It was produced by the daily, unglamorous willingness to let results remain honest and to respond to that honesty with appropriate and sustained discipline. That willingness is in you. Every person here possesses it. It is not a talent distributed selectively to some at birth and withheld from others. It is a choice available to everyone. And choices, as I have said throughout this time together, and will keep saying as long as there are people willing to hear it, choices can be made differently. They can be made better. They can be made consistently and persistently better, one day following another, until the better choice becomes the natural choice, and the natural choice becomes the life that reflects the full measure of what you always had inside you. That is the ultimate promise embedded in the simple, honest, unwavering fact that results don't lie. And that is why, after all these years and all the stages and all the conversations with people sitting exactly where you are sitting today, I still stand before you with the same conviction I carried from the very beginning. Your results are your most faithful teacher. Engage with them honestly. Respect what they communicate. Respond to what they reveal about what needs to change. And do not, for a single unnecessary day longer than required, settle for a version of your results that falls short of what you genuinely know yourself capable of producing. That better version is real. It is waiting. And the only thing between the life you are living and the life that version represents is your willingness, beginning today, to let the truth of your current results guide the decisions of your next chapter with the honesty, the discipline, and the enduring commitment they deserve. The question I leave with you is not complicated. It asks only one thing of you, and that one thing is honesty. What are your results telling you right now? Not what you wish they were saying. Not what you intend for them to say at some future and unspecified date. What are they saying today, in this moment, with the precise and unflinching accuracy of everything they currently know about the habits you have sustained, the philosophy you have operated from, the decisions you have made, and the disciplines you have either exercised or avoided? Listen to them. They are the most honest communication you will ever receive about your life. They are not trying to discourage you. They are not delivering a final verdict. They are offering you something priceless, the truth of where you stand, so you can decide with full information and full clarity where you choose to go from here. Results don't lie, but that precise, consistent, reliable honesty is one of the greatest pieces of genuinely good news any human being will ever receive. Now go do something worthy of that truth. Go do something that, 5 years from today, will produce results you are proud to look at honestly. The principles are waiting. The path is open. And the results, yours, truly and completely yours to shape, are ready to tell a different story the moment you decide to write one. Go build something worthy of the life you have been given.